Hi, Sheila Guffey here again with Creative Aging. We are going to work in white charcoal pencil on black construction paper today. And we are going to do kind of a soft, realistic black and white flower. And I'm working from an image online, so feel free to look up your own black and white photograph. And then you can pick your own flower because it's going to be pretty much the same technique, whatever kind of flower you do. So I have my iPad here, and I already did one example, and I'm going to go ahead and do the second one with you. And so definitely get a picture to work from. That's going to make it a lot easier, especially since we're going to make it realistic. And so have your a picture that maybe somebody printed out for you, or if you have a calendar, that could work, black and white photography calendar, which some people have. Then you're gonna need your black construction paper and white charcoal pencil and a pencil sharpener and then an eraser. And if you have black charcoal pencils, then go ahead and bring those out. That will be very helpful and it makes it easier, but you don't have to have this. It is an option. This one, I didn't use black charcoal pencil, but it is fun. I love the black charcoal pencil with it. So I've got a couple pencils I've already got sharpened, so I'm ready to go. So the first step is gonna be drawing. And so let me move this out of the way. Okay, and let's see. Just make sure you have a good point to start and think about, the placement where you want to start your drawing. So you want to, think about if it's at the top of the page, maybe count down, about an inch from the top and it's almost in the center. And you could draw a little dot there and then just look at basic shapes. So take a look at this, just do one drawing at a, little segment at a time. So, we're just gonna kind of curve around slowly. And you wanna look at the negative space. So that's why I picked this image, because half of this page is blank. So the negative space is just as important as your drawing. And it makes it easier to see the shapes. So I really want you to see the negative space, and that's gonna help you with the drawing aspect, okay? And so I'm going to start, about right here. And everybody has a different style, so if you don't do one smooth line, if you're more sketchy, that's fine, just go with it. And, I already kind of had it visualized where I was going to end it. And it's, so look at where you're going to end it. And you might want to draw a little dot there. So think about, 1 inch down from the page. And then, you want to start rounding it out so you have a stem. If you make your flower bigger, just make your stem smaller. So the stem is the least important part of this flower. So I'm going to go back up here because I want to make sure they're connected. And so I'm going to go up a little higher. And I'm drawing a little dark so you guys can really see it. But you can do what you want. Now this part I wanted to show you up close. So see this shape? It curves. You can either curve this line all the way in, or you could stop it and then connect the bottom part first. So that is an option if you wanted to come down here and kind of get this shape sorted first. All right, and then this one, you can let them overlap. So this one curves in. And then it goes, see how close these are together right there? So I'm gonna curve it around and I want this shape to be really close to this one. All right, so this is where I'm looking and I'm gonna get this line to where it kind of goes towards it. And you just want to draw your basic shapes to get you started with the sketch. Because we're going to do so much shading that, you know, a lot of this is going to be covered up later. So we just want basic shapes. And so this right here, I'm going to just draw this because I want this to be the widest part. And you have an eraser, so you can always do this later. And see right there is kind of a good white segment. So I'm going to draw that in just so I can separate it. And some of this is going to be curved, so you might want to just kind of do some lines to show direction, and that'll be good for later. So this is, you don't want to, so how we color later is going to show the movement and the curves. So it's really going to make a big difference. And I'm going to turn this because I'm drawing crooked and it's really hard. So I'm sorry you have to look at it a little crooked, but my drawing is not going to be good if I'm doing it crooked. I can already see where I need to fix. So right here, I'm going to make this a little bigger. Okay. And then just double check your lines. And if you need to fix anything, you can do it now. I'm going to move that up a little bit. I'm going to move that line. Okay, so I've got a good shape. And I know this type of project looks very weird for a while, and just go with it. I promise, after a lot of work, it's going to come together. And so I don't know if it's going to be easier for you to look at this photograph. I'm going to put the photograph out so maybe you can see that. I think it might be easier for you to see my shading, what I'm doing, if you can see it. There we go. So think about where it's brightest, and then let's start with that. So right here, that is the whitest part of the flower. Now remember, we're only using white. So we have to let the paper show through, and we have to do our pressure to get the various grays. So find the whitest parts of the flower and start with that. So right down here, and then just press hard to get your super white parts. And so right here, this whole part is pretty white. Cover up my weird lines. I know that drawing, since I corrected it, it looked funny. So I want you to really look, and if there's parts where you're not sure if it's the brightest, then just lighten up on your pressure a little bit. And remember, do not color side to side or up and down. You need to really look at the flower and the direction that the lines are going. And that's how you want to color. Okay, and then this part through the center is very white. Let me move this. I'm working, this paper's kind of big, so I know it's hard to see in the frame. I'm trying to make sure you guys see everything. Okay, so this point, so this is really white, so I'm gonna emphasize this. We're gonna do this again. You're gonna probably whiten certain parts a lot later too, at the end. The most fun part about this project is when we use our eraser to kind of draw. So I think you all will enjoy that, but you have to kind of get your first layer before we can do that. So I'm looking at this right now. See this white part right there? See how it curves? That's what I'm doing. So whatever photograph you're working from, you know, just start with the whitest parts and get those down, because all of this will help you later to see the difference between the whitest white and then when it lightens up a little and then when it's a little darker. And I hope that made sense. I feel like I said that wrong. Trying to talk and do art is not my favorite thing. That's why I swear my examples that I do by myself are probably always better than in my videos, because I get to just focus and escape in the artwork. So hopefully you guys are doing that. And you may need to pause me to catch up. So if if the class has any moment where you guys just need to focus on your art, please pause me and then start back up later. So now, certain parts that are in between that aren't, like right here, it's not the brightest area, but it's not that dark either. So I think it's going to be easier to just color it all in, and then I'm going to add lights and darks later. So don't make it white like this. You need to separate each shape. That's going to help make this easier. So this is white, really, really white. And then right here, now remember the lines, I'm going to color the direction of these lines. Okay. And here I'll show you the drawing I did also. So see how I went down? So I'm going to color that direction. And I'm not going to press as hard as where I just was. I'm going to do kind of in between to where it's just a middle gray. And I'm going to color the whole thing, and then I will use my eraser to make some lines, and then I'll brighten it up with just drawing and pressing harder on with my pencil. But just to get the gray on there will help you and make this easier. Because this is a good in-between part of the flower. That's not the brightest white, and it's not black either. And sometimes I prefer right there, see how I see the pencil marks? I like to use my finger, and I like to go over that. And I kind of use it in circle motion, and I use this just to blend and soften. And so I know you guys have done pastels with me, and so we've used our fingers a lot. So I treat some of this like pastels, even though it's charcoal, but it makes it easier and it softens. Now, if you do not want a soft flower, then you don't need to do that. Just depends on the look of what you want. It's fun to get your fingers dirty though. I highly recommend. It works a different part of your brain. That's why sometimes people prefer clay, because you get putting your hands in the artwork. Just like handwriting versus typing on a computer can do different things for relaxation. So it's good to use your fingers. And we don't ever do finger painting, but I will encourage you to smudge all charcoals and pastels. A lot of people try to use paper towels instead, and that's okay too, I guess. All right, so this isn't as white, so I'm smudging this up there. And this part is probably the trickiest. So I'm going to show you on the iPad again, and see that little curve. That's probably the hardest part of the whole drawing. And so I'm going to show you how I did it on this one. So we've got this curve, and then right here is the shape, and it goes out, and then kind of, it's like the petal turns up and it goes up here. Okay. So it looks weird, but we're gonna do this bright white. Actually, I made that pretty big, so let me make that a little smaller. And this is not going to be as white. Be careful with your eraser. You don't want to erase things that you just did. So whenever you erase something, do not go over your entire drawing. You're going to smear everything. So be very careful, because, and even if you put your hand, if you're one of those people that draws and puts your hand all over your page, you're going to smear your entire flower and you're going to make a mess over here, and it's harder to clean up. We will clean the edges. You're going to get some dust on the edges, and that's fine, but you don't want too much because it is a lot more work at the end. And then figure out where your stem's gonna go. Just draw a very light stem. You do not really want this to be your focus, so it's very light. Okay, so let's do in here. Now, this kind of curves, so I'm going to, and I want some of the black paper to show because this is where it gets darker. So this, let's bring this down and lighten it. And remember, it's light because it's going to be separate from this highlight here. And then some of these other marks, they go this direction. So we're going to do the same thing where I'm going to draw really lightly, or color really lightly. And I want to bring it all the way down. And if you haven't done the charcoal cats that I did on a video, you might want to do that one too, because that's good practice, and it's the same type of style, but it's different. You're not coloring as much. It's lots of short lines. But if you enjoy charcoal pencil, definitely watch that video because it's fun. It looks hard, but it's fun. It's just a lot of layers. It really isn't hard. It looks hard. I don't think it's hard. It's just teaching you how to look very, very closely. You're working on one small part at a time, and you're really seeing the difference between whites and all the shades of gray and black. So that's why people think it would be hard, but it actually isn't. Forces you to really gain control over the pressure of how you're using your pencil. Okay, so see how I colored that in? I'm going to figure out where places are a little darker and where they're a little lighter. So I just wanted to kind of do a base. I figured that might be easier. Let's look at the photo again. Do you see how dark it is there? And then it kind of lighter there, and there's almost like streaks. So this is where you can take your eraser and you can go in and use your eraser like a pencil. And so figure out where your dark spots are and make the paper show again. And the great thing about your eraser is it's soft. It's soft, you know, it just creates a soft look. So it just makes your drawing look really elegant. And so I'm drawing some like lines to make it look like kind of shadows going directions. Mainly because that's what my photo is doing. So I'm not making any of this up. I'm really just looking at the photo and doing exactly what I see. I am not good at drawing out of my head. I have to see a photo. And I don't feel bad about it. It's okay. Not everyone, you know, is the same. Some people like to just draw from whatever they see in their head. Some people really need an image. Now I can start with an image and then go off on my own, but I really need something to look at to start. Which is probably a good thing that I was a photographer, so I can take my own photos and work from them. All right, so down here, it's really dark. I'm just erasing. Now, let's go ahead and while we're doing the eraser, I'm gonna bring out some of these lines too. So there's some curvy lines right in here. And so I'm gonna use my eraser kind of to curve, okay? And then this part right above is really dark. So we're gonna bring a little line out there. And same with here, there's a little shadow right here. And it goes up, so keep going up. Hopefully you can see my covering. Okay, I'm gonna lift this up and show you up close because you can see I left where my eraser shavings are. Now this is where I wanna be careful because if I just don't think about how I'm gonna get this off and I smear my drawing or I smear the eraser on the white part and I maybe make a mark I don't want. So, you know, be mindful of how you get these off of your page. You don't want them on there, of course. You can move it in the direction kind of your marks. You can pick it up and shake it if you want. That works. And I'm sure you guys are wearing masks, so it's gonna be hard to blow and try to get this off by blowing on each other. You might not wanna do that during COVID. So I recommend picking it up and just, you know, you don't wanna wrinkle your paper, but you could maybe pick it up and just tap it. Be careful when you lift your paper up. A lot of people do it too hard and they make a big fingerprint. And if you love this drawing and wanna frame it, you don't wanna have a big fingerprint mark. So be careful. Okay, let's keep going. I told you this is a process and it takes a little while. So just keep seeing where the lights and the darks are and so this part's light, a little lighter. And there's some lines going through that are white that go straight down. So I'm gonna draw those back in because I think that will add some interesting textures. So make sure you have a sharp pencil right now. I'm gonna grab a different one. I'm gonna get a sharpened one because I want this part to be very precise and I want it to be a very thin line. So now that we've done a lot of coloring, you should have a good dull edge, which means that you've got progress. Good. So here, just draw little lines, kind of directional. And I'm looking very closely at my picture to see how the lines, what direction they're going. I hope you can see it. I know it's a screen, so there's reflection, but I am very carefully doing each line and looking at each line separately. Okay, so this one curves that direction. This isn't just random stripes. I am actually doing what I see in the photo. And it gets lighter at the bottom, and so you can kind of start a little more pressure and then let it lighten, just fade almost to the bottom. So at the bottom you don't see it, so I'm gonna smudge some of that away. Can you see it? So I just made it lighter, lighter, lighter. I'm even gonna smudge it down here just to really fade it to where it looks so dark at the bottom. Because this is almost the darkest part of the flower right here. So let me smudge it, and I don't like that. That's a little bright, so I'm gonna smudge that. So at this point, it's kind of fun just to move some of these colors around. Not colors, just charcoal. And then right over on this edge is a little bit wider. So I'm gonna go in between the lines I just did, and I'm just gonna brighten it up in certain parts where I see light. So right here is a little lighter. Right here's a lot lighter. And this is a good curve, so you really need to accent that curve right here. Okay, and so now you can tell the areas we need to focus on. So this hasn't had anything, but that's dark. So I'm gonna move some of this down and just get a little bit of smudging. I don't really need a lot of white over here because it's the darkest, but I don't wanna just leave it look like paper. So I'm almost trying to smudge it to where you still see the paper, but it doesn't look like I forgot about a space. Remember, this is very soft right here, so I'm just I'm curving it. I am coloring so lightly, like you can barely see it probably, and that's good. I want the paper to show through, so I'm not covering all of it, but I'm covering some of it, and then I'm gonna use my finger and I'm gonna smudge it. Okay, and then in a minute we're gonna use our eraser. And see that? I want to smudge that because that was just too obvious like of a cutoff, and it lightens, but it wasn't just like white and black. So I'm smudging that too. And then over here, gonna brighten some of that up. Smudging. So I'm not smudging all of it, but I am choosing what areas I want to smudge. So be very mindful of every single thing you do. Now, this has some dark in it. Let's look at this picture again. See how dark it is? We're gonna take our eraser and I'm gonna drag it and I'm gonna curve it down. So I want the widest part right there to be right next to my eraser line, and I want that contrast. That's what makes good black and white, whether it's photography or drawing or whatever. You usually want good contrast, and that's what makes black and white images the prettiest, and that's what makes them look so interesting. You don't want it to just look muddy and gray. Okay, so see, I'm going right alongside. I'm just using my eraser, and this looks like one long line, so I'm gonna use my eraser just like how I would draw. So it's gonna be one long line, just like a brush stroke. And then shake it off, or you can move it if you wanna move it off your page. I really think it's better to shake it off. And let's look at it. So it's getting there. Then this part needs to be worked on. Same thing, it's really, really white right here. And then it fades darker here. So this is gonna be the whitest part of this section. So I'm working in little sections. That's easier than seeing an image as a whole. You almost want to just focus on little parts at a time. So just focus on this part, up here, and then switch and maybe focus on this part. If you look at the whole thing, your eyes are going to get overwhelmed and you might get stressed out. So don't do that. I think that's why people freak out about drawing. Everyone says they can't draw, but they just haven't learned how to draw, and they haven't learned how to or train their eye to really see this detail. So it's all learning. If you haven't had professional drawing lessons, then maybe you don't know how to draw. That's no big deal. We're gonna learn together. But everyone's really hard on themselves about drawing. Okay, so I'm just doing this shape, and this kind of curves out. And remember, this part is the darkest, so I'm gonna move it because maybe you can see it better this way. So So I'm making it very light over here, and then I'm gonna bring my eraser and bring out the darkest corner. Smudge it, circle motion right here because I want it to be really smooth. And then use your eraser and let's bring out that little dark edge. There's like almost a dark circle right here. And now, there's still a lot of work to do, but I'm gonna switch back to the other one and show you the very end steps. But for this one, let me just show you, so see how the edges, so some of this got smeared away. I want you to look at the drawing, figure out which edges are the brightest. And we're gonna go brighten that up. So not all edge is bright. Do you see how this one, it fades? You're almost seeing the black, and then all of a sudden it's like kind of a light white, and then it gets wider and brighter, and you press harder. Same with over here, it's all like a hard line. And then down here, it's softer. So this part's fun. So we already brightened that line up. We're gonna do the same thing all around. And remember, for this part, see, my hand is on my drawing, but I'm not gonna move that part of my hand. So if you're drawing and your hand is on your drawing, just make sure you're not moving your hand because you're gonna smear all of it. So if you hold it still, it's okay. Also, don't put lotion on right before this project because it will kind of make marks. I don't recommend using lotion before any art project that we do, to be honest. It will mess with the clay, it messes with the pigment, even watercolor paper. So it's probably just a good idea to put lotion on after art class, not before. Okay, so right here, it's not as white, so I'm fading it. I'm gonna use my finger. Then over here, it gets white again. So I'm gonna just, not as white though. So I'm just kinda, now over here, it's not a hard line, it's just a soft white edge. So I'm gonna color it over here. Then right here, it's a hard white line. So I want this to be a really good line right there. Okay, that edge, it's very important. And this is thicker. So notice how some of these white lines are thinner and some are thicker. So right there it's thicker, and then it gets a little bit thinner. And then it gets really thin and it gets lighter. So I'm putting less pressure on right here. And in a minute, I'm gonna erase that line because we don't even see this part, right? So we're gonna erase up here because you don't even see the part of this line at the very top. So I'm gonna smudge that. And I don't want that to just fall off, so I'm kind of using it and just doing a very light shadow. Okay, so hopefully you can see it's coming together. You just keep working. So there's still a lot of work to be done. This needs more dark. So this needs white. Needs to be whiter. I'm gonna show you next to this drawing. So this one is just a little further along. So I want you to continue with the process. Continue. And then once it gets almost to the end, we're gonna do finishing touches. So this has a lot more, just a lot more layers. So, continue working. And then once you get to the end point, that's when you really wanna use your eraser and fine tune every little detail. So take your photograph, look at it closely, okay? And then, look at shapes, make sure that, you have the darkest spot. So I don't have the darkest black spot quite brought out enough. So I'm gonna use my eraser and I'm going to just darken a couple of places out. So you want to make sure you have the brightest whites and you wanna have the darkest blacks, and then everything in between. So this is the final steps, is just to bring them out. because you smudge a lot of your work, so you kind of have to do the process again. So that's the darkest right there. Right here is dark, so you can see this? So I'm gonna just erase, just because some of these little charcoal dust went in there, and I just wanna bring it back out. So I've already done this, but you have to do it again just at the very end. Bring out your whites and your blacks. And I'm gonna leave that, I'm gonna dust it in a minute. So just give me, I know you can see it. We'll get it off in a minute, but I'm gonna just do all the darks right now. So right here, there's a little more dark. And this dark kind of lightens up there, so I'm just gonna use my eraser to bring a little more line work right there. And same thing here, it's dark at the bottom, so I'm gonna make sure that that's the darkest part. And I'm gonna bring those lines up a little bit, just to separate. And then that part's dark. I didn't do much to the stem. Don't even worry about the stem, honestly. You want your eye to go up here. And I'm going to lighten an edge of this because I want this dark to go up there. So I'm gonna lighten it. It's a little too thick. Okay. Okay, let's So hopefully you can see the difference that eraser made. Let's go like real close. So this is what I want you to do with yours. I want you to look at every little part of it up close. Now let's bring out the whites again. Okay, so just make sure that matches your photograph. Right there needs some highlights. And I'm telling you, these little final touches, they are gonna make all the difference. And you guys are gonna be so impressed. I swear these come together, you're gonna be blown away by your talent. I know it. Just don't give up. Hopefully you haven't given up by now. I've seen some of my students and they just really freak out sometimes with drawing. So I hate that I'm not there with you, giving you a cheer talk. By the way, I'm actually teaching in person starting March 15th, so I'm gonna see some of you guys soon, which I am ecstatic about. Definitely miss it. Sitting around by myself and talking to this phone is not the same. Okay, this edge, right there, needs to be bright. That's the brightest part on the whole flower almost, okay? So make sure that that is really bright. Same with this, so that needs to be lightened up. So I'm just gonna go on the edge, lighten it up. Make sure you have a good point. You need to sharpen your pencil for the end steps. And this part, brightest. All right, so now I want you to look at the very brightest. So this is the brightest, this is the brightest. So do it again. And right here, can you see it? That is just shining. So we need that shape to come out. And then we've got our edges, I already did that. I think everything else looks good. Let me hold this up for you and see how I did this stem though? I did just draw it and then I did one side just a little lighter. So I didn't do much, but I did lighten up one side because the light is coming from this direction, as you can tell from the photograph. You can see the edges are the brightest and there's a spotlight over here. And that's how they took a picture of the flower. All right, let's shake that dust off. Let's look at it. That looks good. And at this point, you know, if you're happy with it, you like your shape, you see the brightest white and you see the black and you see all the grays in between. As long as you have that, I would say you could be done. Take your eraser polish up your edges because I guarantee you're gonna have smudges. And you guys are used to Lee and I doing this part with you, so you guys usually don't have to do the cleaning up, but you're gonna have to do it today. So take it, just be very careful, go around the edges, make sure there's no fingerprint smudges, and be very careful. You do not mess your drawing up at this point. And it's done. Write your name on it and go find a frame for your beautiful black and white flower drawing. If you want, you could spray this with a little bit of hairspray. You want to hold the hairspray about a foot away and spray in slow back and forth, like shh, 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 shh. That's it, okay? So just a few sprays and go down towards the end of the paper. If you sit there and you just hold it down in one spot, you're gonna run your picture. So you don't have to do that part since you guys aren't used to. This is probably not gonna smudge. Just make sure, wherever you place this, if you're not gonna hang it up, maybe put another piece of construction paper on the top of it so that it won't smudge on other artwork or it won't lose its. Just be careful where you store it. That's what I'm saying. If you're not going to spray it with hairspray, because it's pretty good. You can tell, like, look, I'm going to use my finger on this one. Let's do it. I'll just show you. So if I use my finger and it's still not smudging much. So you really don't have to have the hairspray with the charcoal, but that's an option. Anyways, go find your photograph and have fun doing this. You could do a couple if you wanted. I hope you enjoy, and I will see some of you guys in a couple weeks. Thanks.